What's going on, traders? A few things to talk about. It's going to be a pretty short video. First things first, I want to say happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, or happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I know this is a male-dominated space, but happy Mother's Day to the 1 or 2 women that watch this channel. If you have children, or if you even have a child on the way, hope you enjoyed your weekend. Respect to all the mothers out there. So let's get straight into it. Let's talk about the SPY. Let's talk about the triple Qs, VIX, and of course we're going to talk about Bitcoin. So right now we're looking at the daily time frame for the SPY. Interesting enough, we closed off on a hangman pattern. Now, me personally, I'm more so of a fan of hangman patterns that are bearish, or I should say have bearish volume. This one has bullish volume. But if we go back in time and we look for other hangman patterns that kind of formed the same way, right here is an example of a hangman pattern that pretty much formed the same way. You formed off an uptrend, and then eventually you ended up heading towards the downside. You have another hangman pattern here. This is what I'm talking about. I prefer hangman patterns like this. I was trying to find other examples. That way you guys don't say I have like a strong bias or anything like that. Like other examples where the opposite happened, off an uptrend, not a downtrend. But it's really hard to find them. So you guys let me know in the comments below if there's other examples. But this was pretty much all I can really find. Right, I'm sure there's more out there. I just haven't found them or took the time out to really find them. But you did close the day off of a potential reversal pattern, right? And interesting enough, you're leaving a lot of gaps towards the downside. I think that's kind of scary. I would say that much. Can we continue towards the upside? Is very much possible. Right now, I'm just simply looking at 585 and nothing more. For now, that can obviously change. But if we're looking at the weekly time frame, something we've talked about over and over and over is the double top neckline, right? I told you guys that SPY can head as high as 575. If we're being optimistic, 580. And the reason why I was saying it could head that high is because of this double top neckline, which I imagine that's where the SPY was trying to go if we were going to continue to pump towards the upside. And that's exactly what happened. So you have your top here and your top here. We're on a weekly time frame, by the way. You have your top here, and then your neckline is at around 576. Highest you're looking at is about 580. So right where these guys are, right here in this area. Let's actually mark it out for those of you who need bifocals, right? But right here is what I'm looking at. So pretty much you're at the neckline. You're pretty much in the supply and demand zone here. If the SPY manages to break above 585, then you're pretty illiquid towards the upside, and you can start heading towards 600. All right, you can head towards 600. So be on the lookout for that possibility. Bears are still very much present in this area, so you definitely want to be careful. Take profit when you can. And that's pretty much all I have when it comes to the upside in regards to the SPY. Now, for the downside, if we're talking about downside here, it goes without saying, you're just looking at a break below 573. I would just say 570, your psych level, and then from there, you're looking at 570. Okay, if you break below 570, then you're not, I wouldn't say you're really illiquid. Let's go back to the daily time frame. I'm looking at the weekly here. If you manage to break below 572, then you're looking at a move towards this gap fill all the way at about 567, more or less, right? 567, and then from there we'll have to wait and see what happens. But you are breaking above this inverse head and shoulders neckline right here. So you have a shoulder here, and then you have a head here, and then you have another shoulder here around this area. So looks pretty clean, I will say that much. And then your neckline is right about here. So if anything, if we are going to drop, I just simply imagine that we're going to just retest the head and shoulders neckline all the way at around 565, crazy enough, and then we'll have to see what happens from there. Either we pump towards the upside, or this gets invalidated if we break back below the neckline. So the question remains, do I still think we're going to see a drop in May? I still think that's going to happen. I think we're still going to either see this gap get filled at around 530, or we make a double bottom, or we make a new low. So I still stand by what I said. I'm still going to give you guys upside scenarios, but ultimately I do think another drop is coming. Now, if we erase everything here and we look at the monthly time frame and we zoom out, zoom out, here we go. All right, and if we zoom out, we see that if we are talking about all-time highs, right, let's entertain the possibility of all-time highs, because I did say that I do believe summertime is where we're going to see all-time highs, and I guess technically May is part of the summertime, but I don't think we're going to see all-time highs and this is just my thoughts, this is just my opinion, till sometime towards the end of the summer. And I could be wrong there, but ultimately that's still my thought process, right? But if we are talking about all-time highs, let's say it happens sooner for whatever reason, maybe, you know, tariff news or CPI comes in good, PPI comes in good, Jerome Powell decides to cut rates, who knows, right? But ultimately, I would be looking at a move towards 620 on the SPY, all the way at the top of this trend here. 620, around 620, 630 range is what I'm looking at for the SPY before potentially tanking back towards the downside. Now, one thing I want you guys to pay attention to, because a lot of you are talking about this bullish wick, right? When it comes to wicks, at some point in time in history, I don't know when, the market or SPY, whatever stock you're looking at, has to clear that wick out in some way, shape, or form. They either clear half of it or they clear out most of it. And what I mean by that is that at some point in time, this whole area here, and this area too, is going to get cleared out. All right, right here. All right, you see it all the time. You go back in time. Here you had this massive bullish, bullish wick, and then eventually you headed back down here. You cleared out a good percentage of it. We'll say about 30-50% of it before heading back towards the upside. Right here, you see another example of this happening here, and then it's not guaranteed all the time, but obviously the bigger the wick, pause, the bigger it is, the more likely it is to get cleared out, right? So here, for example, is another example. So a lot of times when you form these massive wicks towards the downside or even to the upside, it creates imbalance across the market, or for that individual ticker. And at some point in time, I do think the SPY is going to need to come back down here. I'm not saying it has to come all the way down here or anything, but it definitely needs to clear out this imbalance, right, before potentially heading back towards the upside. And then we could start heading towards like 700, 670, things like that. But that is what I'm looking at for the potential scenario of all-time highs heading into this summer. I think we can go as high as about 620, between 620, 630 if we're being optimistic, maybe 650. All right, so that's what I'm looking at if we're talking about all-time highs. I've said multiple times that I do expect all-time highs to happen sometime this year, and I'm leaning more so towards the end of the summer. We'll see. So that's what I'm looking at when it comes to the SPY. I think I went over everything when it comes to the SPY. Triple Qs. So triple Qs, let's go down to the daily time frame, and so we reset our charts here. And so if we're looking at the triple Qs here, you have the same pattern, right? You can argue that this is a dragonfly pattern or even a gravestone doji. Actually, gravestone dojis are upside down, so that's wrong. But ultimately, you are forming a head and shoulder, not a head and shoulders, what am I talking about? A hangman pattern, right? Not only did you form a hangman pattern, but you formed a hangman pattern right under this falling wedge. So it's very much possible that we're going to see downside between tomorrow and Wednesday if this pattern plays out. Now, no pattern is guaranteed to play out, but if we are going to assume that this is a hangman pattern, which is a very bearish pattern, that we are going to see downside from here and possibly start filling this gap all the way at 490, or we just stop at the bottom of the wick here and just, you know, retest 500 and then continue back towards the upside. And so that's what I'm looking at for the triple Qs right now. You have this reversal pattern, this hangman pattern, and if you go to the weekly time frame here, you see that we have this rising wedge pattern as well. So something to pay attention to. Again, if we erase everything and we focus on the double top neckline and the evening star pattern that we've been talking about over and over, right? Right now you're at the top, or you closed right at the over the top of the evening star pattern, and not only that, but you closed right within the zone of the neckline, right? So right here between here at around 499, 500, which was a target, and here all the way at 515. So triple Qs can head as high as 515 if we're being optimistic. But if we are talking about a trap here, or a potential bull trap here, this hangman would pretty much be a sign that we are looking at some type of bull trap, and we could be seeing some downside. Now, ultimately, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do one of these, but we want to see what happens once we fill this gap at 490, if we decide to fill this gap at 490. And again, we have a lot of gaps to the downside. The market is going to have to correct at some point in time. I don't know when. Again, my guess is May, but the market is going to have to correct some of this. This is a lot of imbalance towards the downside. At some point in time, the market will have to correct this, but by all means, enjoy the upside while it is here. Now, that's what I'm looking at for the triple Qs when it comes to potential downside. Now, if we're talking about upside, I just gave you guys a target. Obviously, you want to break above 510. right? And then from there, you're obviously going to head towards about 515 on the triple Qs. Now, interesting enough, and this is why I encourage you to join the Discord. Last Wednesday, May 7th, right? A lot of you been asking about like where does the Discord bot its alerts from? Sorry, um, a lot of you been asking about where does the Discord bot its alerts from? Wow, try saying that fast. All right, but ultimately the Discord bot gets all of its alerts from the options chain, right? It doesn't just alert random things, right? It doesn't alert like, it doesn't look at a chart and be like, oh, support and resistance here, and then it alerts something, right? It gets all of its alerts from an options chain. So right here, last Wednesday, we got an alert that institutions were loading up triple Q calls, 510 calls for expiration of June 30th, and the value was 1.14 million. And I believe if we go back to May 7th, right, bear with me here, May 7th, right about here, this candle right here, this candle closed at 485. 485. So had you got into those calls here, right, if you got into that alert here and you held over the weekend, you'll be sitting on some decent profit. Today, triple Qs went as high as about, what was it, 507.89. So you would have made a nice bag just off this alert alone. And so we got a few other alerts as well today. I just want to show you guys what you're looking at. Today we got SQQ calls, right? Institutions are, I guess, loading up SQQQ calls. 27 strike. I believe SQQ is at like 25 right now. Then you got the AI confidence of 67%, 768K premium. And then you got SoFi puts. I'm not a fan of SoFi. I think it moves like dirt, but ultimately, if you want to like invest into shares, I think SoFi is good. But trading SoFi is not interested in. But if you see here, SoFi, you got 13 strike puts. June 20th, 2025 is the expiration. Then you got like a 60% confidence, and then the premium is pretty high. You got a 3.12 million premium. Then you got your volume and open interest. So this is just the kind of alerts you get when you join the Discord. And then earlier today, even here, you got like Amazon calls, 210 strike. They're supposed to play out this week. We'll see. I always encourage the Discord members to, add extra time to these plays. Here you got SPY calls, right? 581 calls. They expire today, and you see where SPY is now. So these were very, very much in profit. And then you got like 68% AI confidence, and then you got your premiums of 585K. So this is the type of alerts you get when you join the Discord. It helps build confidence. It helps you be more independent and not depend on the Discord host all the time when it comes to trading. But yeah, these are the type of alerts you get in the Discord. People join, they're like, it's not enough alerts, and it's just like, what? Like, hello? Like, there's like 3 tabs outside of myself that alerts plays all the time. So it's just crazy when people join and say that. I don't know. But yeah, these are the type of alerts you get when you join the Discord. And so yeah, like I was saying, triple Qs, Discord bot alerted 510 calls on the triple Qs. Now, we haven't quite hit 510, and we don't necessarily have to, but if we are talking about more upside, I imagine that 512, between 512 515 is the move if we're looking at that play potentially playing out. So we can do one of these and then possibly head back towards the downside, right? So that's what I'm looking at when it comes to the triple Qs. I believe I went over everything when it comes to the SPY and the triple Qs. And so if we're looking at the VIX, so interesting enough, the VIX is pretty oversold when it comes to the 4-hour time frames, the much smaller time frames, I should say. Now, what I will say when it comes to the VIX, right, it doesn't necessarily, when it's oversold, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to spike. It's a hit or miss, really. You either spike on the VIX or you consolidate and until you're not oversold anymore or even overbought, depending on the direction you're looking at. You either consolidate or you spike, right? It's one or the other, right? So if we go back in time, it's very rare that the VIX gets hit with oversold territory. But if you go back in time, like here, for example, down here, I know it's hard to see this, but just bear with me. But here, you ended up spiking towards the upside, and then you did like your little roller coaster. But yeah, once VIX was oversold here in this area here, you got a little bit more downside, but then you ended up spiking towards the upside. And then you go back in time even further, you see here this is what I was talking about. The VIX like consolidated until it wasn't oversold anymore, and then it like did a little spike here, but then ultimately it just kept continuing towards the downside. And then here, same thing. Well, not same thing. Actually, here you spike towards the upside. Hopefully, you guys can see this. But here, you was oversold on the VIX, and then you spike towards the upside. So this is a very rare scenario. It's very rare scenarios where the VIX is oversold, but when it is, it either spikes or just simply consolidates until it's not oversold anymore. So take this with a grain of salt for now. But like I said before, I said this at the beginning of the year. I tell you guys this all the time. Once the VIX, if the VIX, okay, keyword is if the VIX gets between 15 and 14, historically for this year alone, is when the VIX starts to spike towards the upside. All right, so we got a lot of gaps towards the upside, guys. So I mean, a lot of gaps towards the upside. Gap here. You got a tons of fair value gaps in this area here. Another gap here. This is like a semi gap here. You got another gap up here. So there's a lot of imbalance towards the upside when it comes to the VIX. I imagine the market at some point in time is going to clear this out. We'll see. All right. So that's what I'm looking at when it comes to the VIX. Bitcoin. Some of you are still asking about Bitcoin, and do I think it's still going to hit 108K? As long as Bitcoin stays above 99K, I don't see a reason why it still can't pump towards the upside. If we're one thing I did say to a Discord member, I think it was like last week, I told them this. When it comes to Bitcoin, it seems to lag, but it is a leading indicator, right? We can all agree on that, I believe. But the market was pumping before Bitcoin, so I think Bitcoin is catching up with the market right now, right? That's what I'm thinking that it's doing. So if we're talking about Bitcoin being a leading indicator, I think it took a seat in the passenger seat this time, and it's kind of like just catching up at this point. But as long as Bitcoin stays above 99K and 102K, I do believe it still can head as high as 108K. If it doesn't, oh well. I mean, I talked about this thing being bullish since 95K. We went as high as 105K, 105.7K. So I mean, that's a win in my book. I mean, I moved from 95K to 105K. That's a win in my book. So take it or leave it. But ultimately, Bitcoin still looks fine. It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look great. It just looks fine. You're just consolidating here. You dropped a little bit. Bull stepped in. We'll see what happens from there. So that's my thoughts when it comes to Bitcoin. If you break back below 99K, then obviously you're going to be looking at some downside towards 95K. You're pretty illiquid all the way towards 97K right here. So be pretty interesting to see what happens. But ultimately, Bitcoin still looks fine. Again, my target is 108K if we're talking about pumping towards the upside. Highs we can be looking at intermediate to long term is 112K and 115K. So that's my thoughts when it comes to Bitcoin. And last but not least, I mean, if we look at Quant data, Quant data was just acting crazy this week for me. I mean, today for me. It just would not work out for me today. So I do apologize to Discord members. The whole time I thought nothing was coming in, but it turns out I just had to reset everything. You got IWM 198 puts for June 20th that came in 11 minutes after close. Pretty crazy here. 5,370 is the quantity here. Then you got 1.22 million premium. SPY puts came in as well. 552 puts for June 20th. 3,000 quantity, and then 1.28 million. And then, you know, you feel free to screenshot all of this. I'm not going to go over every single thing here. But yeah, this is what this was what the options flow was looking like today, or the consolidated options flow, I should say, was looking like today. Nothing too crazy off of glancing at this. Triple Q puts, I guess, 490 puts. You know, you got these expiring May 30th. We'll see what happens with that. You got 510 puts expiring 2 years from now, so I'm sure they close those. But we'll see. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think we're going to see downside? Also, the whole buy the rumor, sell the news, I forgot to address that. A lot of you were getting the impression that I was talking about today was going to be like a sell-off. When you're looking at Liberation Day, the sell-off didn't really happen until a day after, right? So just because we got the news today, that wasn't me saying, oh, we're going to just sell off Monday, right? Liberation Day, we go to triple Qs here. Liberation Day was April 2nd. Right here, yeah, you sold off a little bit after hours, but ultimately Liberation Day was bullish, and then the next day you ended up gapping down and so on and so forth. So that's the whole idea behind buy the rumor, sell the news. It doesn't necessarily happen the same day. It can maybe take a day or two afterwards, but yeah, it's very much possible we could be in a sell the news scenario now that we finally got the news. CPI is tomorrow. I can't say for sure if that's going to have an effect on the market. This is a Trump market at this point. We'll see. But yeah, a lot of you like had this implication that I meant like Monday, today was just going to be some sell off. But yeah, if you look at Liberation Day was bullish. The day after, that's when you had a sell off. So just wanted to point that out. Thursday was like when you gap down and then you continue to gap down. So we'll see what happens tomorrow and Wednesday, or the rest of this week, I should say. You have CPI tomorrow, you have PPI Thursday, and then you have like Michigan news Friday. All right. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think we're going to continue to pump towards the upside? Do you think all-time highs is on the way? Do you think we're going to dump towards the downside and everybody gets diddled? All right. Let me know what you think. Until the next video, traders, have a good one.